And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
Go ahead and say it, Ed. Go Tigers!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
You like that? You like that?
F it. Jamar's down there somewhere.
The New Orleans Saints select Marcus Davenport.
No!
Splash Brothers? Yeah.
It's playoff. Keep going, Brace.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
In your name, Lord, and be able to use it as an avenue to fellowship, and then also not only that, but share your name. And just thank you for giving some of these athletes that have come forward and pronounced their faith and talked more openly about you, Lord. Just thank you for that. Keep encouraging and giving these athletes the courage and the words to say to step up on that platform that and shout your name and give glory to you, Lord, as only you know how. And just thank you for everything you continue to bless us with, and please just continue for us to share your name. And your name we pray, Lord. Amen. All right, guys, jumping right on in. First, this is our recommended top waiver wire additions that are owned in less than 60% of ESPN leagues, and they're owned in less than 60% when I write this pod. So that's typically on Monday into Tuesday if they're owned in less than 60%. So typically that number doesn't spike till after waivers run on Wednesday morning for most leagues. So if you get on there and they're like, this guy was owned in way more leagues or, whatever, then that it just depends on when you look. But when I wrote this, owned in less than 60% of ESPN leagues. Typically, we select some of the top position players and then separate them out: quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end. Some shows do 1 through 10. Some shows do positions. I like to do positions because your team might not need a wide receiver. They might need a running back. What was the number one running back? And then that's the way we have them separated out into quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, running back, so on and so forth. But first, I need to go ahead and thank our sponsors: Big Reed BBQ, Automotive Detailing Solutions, This Little Piggy Barbecue Food Truck, and Mimi's Children's Boutique. Thank you for supporting us and stepping up and being some of the first ones to come out and show your love to our pod and the Dirty Boot Sports Network. We really appreciate everything. And then our title sponsor of this pod is going to be This Little Piggy Barbecue Food Truck. It's a barbecue food truck based in Jonesboro, Louisiana. Brings the best barbecue around to the people. You can find This Little Piggy and owner Kyle Terrell set up at events and festivals around the Jackson Parish and surrounding areas. Keep track of the food truck when you can. Off Facebook, they normally post on This Little Piggy's barbecue food truck, This Little Piggy barbecue food truck page. They post where they are and when they're going to be somewhere, and keep track of them. That way you can get your hands on some amazing brisket and pulled pork. I have not had the chance to try it yet. Hopefully soon. As we're getting into football season, I'm sure there's going to be some events and stuff coming up where he's going to be posted up. We appreciate you supporting us, Kyle, and keep doing it. I look forward to trying some of that good food. Moving on, we're going to preview some upcoming things. This week, we're only going to have one pod, unfortunately. We are going to be looking at our Facebook page for some graphics. We're going to get our content out, like our start-sit sleepers. We're still going to get them out. We're just not going to discuss them at the end of this week. Unfortunately, Josh, Clay, and myself have some events going on that we just are not going to be able to get another pod out this week, but I definitely want to get at least one, which is the waiver pod. Now, after this week, we should still be able to get about 2 pods out a week. So we'll still be getting our waiver pod out and then our start sit sleeper pod. Either way, we're going to have graphics up on the Facebook page, on the Dirty Boot Sports Facebook page for you to look at. It's going to have our waiver picks and our start sit sleeper picks. So keep a lookout for those the rest this week, and then we'll be coming at you with some more pods for the rest of the year. Jumping right on in, we're going to have some news. Obviously, since this last pod, Travis Kelce was ruled out for Thursday Night Football after he hyperextended his knee. We had a good idea that he was going to be, and he was. Really no new update. He started rehab, which is good, and really gives him a good chance to be back for Sunday. I really don't see them holding him out. He was wanting to go Thursday, but his knee was still so swollen he couldn't run as well. So he's rehabbing already. completely expect him to be back. Cooper Kupp, also since the last pod, got placed on IR, which means he has to miss at least 4 weeks. They did place him on IR before week 1, so he will be eligible to come back for week 5. Sorry, Cooper Kupp owners like myself, I have him in one league, unfortunately. But he's out till at least week 5. We got an idea for a replacement. We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. But, yeah, he's out till at least week 5. And then there's some grumblings that it could be longer than week 5. We'll just have to see. He went and seen a specialist in Minnesota with Sean McVay prior to this past weekend before the game. And then that's when they decided to put him on IR till week and he'll be at least out until week 5. So who knows if it'll be longer or if he'll be eligible, if he'll be ready to come off by week 5, but he's out for at least 4 weeks. J.K. Dobbins this weekend, unfortunately, tore his Achilles in the game, going to have season-ending surgery. Really sad story for a guy that's a really talented runner, but comes back, first game, tears his Achilles. That's a season ender. Also, man, Achilles were popular this weekend. Aaron Rodgers, Monday Night Football. I mean, the place was crazy. Comes out, 4 plays in, tears his Achilles for the Jets. Really, really sad because I think the Jets have the total package team, and Aaron Rodgers was probably that last key piece that they needed to have a good deep playoff run, if not win a Super Bowl. Their defense definitely looked like a Super Bowl caliber defense against Buffalo's offense on Monday night, but neither here nor there. Aaron Rodgers tears his Achilles 4 plays in. It's going to have surgery. It's already confirmed with the MRI. Unfortunately, poor Garrett Wilson owners until they get a serviceable QB, because right now with Zach Wilson, I think he ended the night with like five catches for 40-something yards and a touchdown. Honestly, that's probably what you're going to be looking at until they get a more capable quarterback in there with that offense. Now, hopefully they'll be able to game plan a little bit better since they know they have Garrett Wilson. I mean, they have Zach Wilson in at starting quarterback now, but until then, we're hoping that they sign a more capable veteran or trade for a better veteran quarterback, maybe one of these high-end backups in the league, hopefully, because really that's all they're missing is a good quarterback to get them over that hump. Next, Austin Eckler had a great game, but emerges from his first week with an ankle injury. His practice status for this week is unclear currently. Hopefully it's not nothing major, but if it is, be paying attention to our waivers for later because it's going to be key. Also, Aaron Jones emerges with a hamstring injury. They're still evaluating him as of yesterday. No new news. Obviously, he's had a history of hamstring problems in the past, so this isn't great. It was encouraging for him to run off the field like he did, but let's also keep in mind he's 28 years old. So if he's out, that's going to be a big blow to that offense. Jacoby Myers, who had a big week 1 in concussion protocol, so keep that in mind. Let's see, Mark Andrews, who ended up being ruled out for week 1, actually, and ended up, after he was ruled out, he practiced today and has practiced. He had a quad injury, and John Harbaugh said that he's looked good. Anthony Richardson, those of you that have him, knee and ankle injury, some people start him, and he had a decent debut, 23 points against Jacksonville. Honestly, did a lot better than I thought. Ran the ball, 10 times, which is what we anticipated, but threw the ball fairly well, 24 for 37, 223 yards and touchdown, threw a pick, but he also rushed for a touchdown, which if he's doing that, could be this year's Justin Fields, who knows. But either way, he was held out for the last drive as precautionary, but we'll see what his practice status is this week. Let's see. Also, who else? There was another. Deontay Johnson comes down with a hamstring injury and expected to be week to week and probably miss several weeks. Right now, they're already saying probably unavailable, but I seen another report saying that it was expected to be multiple weeks by Adam Schefter with his right hamstring injury sustained. So I would not be counting on him for week 2, guys, just FYI. Also, Jonathan Taylor seems to be ready. Just a little update. Seems to be ready to come up, but he's on the pup, so he's got to miss 4 weeks. But he could be traded during those 4 weeks, and he said he's ready to go now. So if he gets traded, then I believe he can practice, but he can't go back till week 5. But he'll be available, and if he gets traded, he'll be able to play for whoever he gets traded to. Christian Watson, who ended up getting ruled out for week 1, they're saying would not commit to retaking the field in week 2, but there's obviously a lot better chance than last week, is what the beat writer's saying. That doesn't sound great, honestly. It says they're taking it day by day, but if he's still not practicing yet, I would not hold my breath if you're a Christian Watson owner. Let's see. Jerry Jeudy, no updates as far as I've seen. It just says he's inactive, so no updates for him. And Rodgers, Dobbins, they're out. Jacoby Myers, concussion protocol. And that's pretty much going to wrap up the injuries and updates. So we're going to roll right on into our waiver wire week 1 ads. All right, we're going to start off. We're going to go through each position, quarterback, then running back, then wide receiver, tight end, and then streaming defenses. And then I'll probably throw a couple kickers out there at you just in case you're bored and looking to swap it up. But first, for my waiver week 1 quarterback ads, we're going to go with Mac the Attack Jones for New England. Honestly, this is not a year-long thing by any means, but Mac Jones trailing against Philadelphia this past week threw the ball 54 times. Mac Jones is only owned in 4.9% of leagues. Was the quarterback 2 going into Monday night, and I'm pretty sure with as bad as Josh Allen played, maintain that quarterback, and Aaron Rodgers tearing his Achilles, he maintained that quarterback 2 for week 1 with 32.14 points on week 1. Threw the ball 54 times against Philadelphia, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. But honestly, the reason they threw the ball so much because they fell behind early to Philly, and they abandoned the run almost exclusively, which is crazy for a New England offense. But I will say, they're going to be playing at Miami this week. And let me verify at Miami because I thought I had seen somewhere that it was going to be in New England. But give me 1 second. But anyway, neither here nor there. They're playing Miami, whether they play them at Miami or at home. Yeah, they're playing them at home. I'm sorry. They're playing Miami at home this week. And look, Miami put up buku points against the Chargers this past week, showed off that offensive power with Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Raheem Mostert looked pretty good. They had some guy named Craycraft coming out of nowhere catching passes at wide receiver. So Miami's offense looks full bore, ready to go. And I would dare to say they looked way better than Phillies did against New England's defense. So, and if they threw the ball 54 times trying to keep up with Philly, I can't imagine it being any different trying to keep up with Miami. So, until then, we really are to me, if they throw the ball 54 times, that kind of volume, I think Mac Jones is a fine streamer for week 2. Now, I would put him on hold for the rest of the season, because I don't think he's going to throw that ball that much. But for this week coming up, if you need a streamer, or if you had Rodgers and somebody else that didn't pan out, and you're just looking to pick somebody up and maybe catch lightning in a bottle, pick up Mac Jones and stream him this week against Miami at home. Then number 2, we got Brock Purdy. Man, boy, we were bashing him on the last pod on the start, sit, sleepers. And he come out and proved us wrong, honestly. Really efficient play. Made some really good plays this past week. And with his weapons that he has with CMC, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk breaking out like crazy, Elijah Mitchell. I mean, honestly, Brock Purdy looks like somebody that could be a really sneaky play and is only owned in like 24% of leagues. So he went 19 for 29, 65% pass completion rate, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He carried the ball 3 times for 20 yards. He did have a fumble, so he could have had an even better week. You could add 2 more points because let's just say he's not going to fumble every week, obviously, but ran the ball three carries for 20 yards. I mean, that's an extra 2 points bonus right there that you probably weren't expecting. Now they're going to be playing at Los Angeles against the Rams. Honestly, if Mac Jones would have threw the ball 54 times last week, then Brock Purdy would probably be my number one ad because he's probably going to look a lot better for the rest of the season. And now they're going at the Rams. You could argue he might be an even better play for next week. I still think if Mac Jones throws the ball that much, that he's the better play because you got more volume. But either way, Brock Purdy looked good. Excellent playmakers around him, so it means he's going to have a lot of touchdown potential and a lot of playmakers to make big plays for him, even on short yardage throws. So I think he's an excellent option. Not to mention he's got one of the best defenses in the league on the other side of the ball to give him more opportunities and him hang on to that ball more. So I like Brock Purdy, number 2. Number 3, kind of a homer pick, but honestly kind of not because Derek Carr for the New Orleans Saints, we kind of told you heading into the season, we really liked him. Owned in 28% of the league, looked really good. I say really good. That's a lie. He didn't look really good, but he looked pretty good against Tennessee. Won the game, obviously. Very efficient, 23 for 33, 305 yards, a touchdown, interception. Ran the ball 3 times for 4 yards, but obviously we're not going to be looking at that. But 305 yards really sticks out. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Honestly, not that efficient in the red zone, but we got to remember, this is his first year in this offense. He's still gaining chemistry with these guys on this team. But Rashid Shaheed looked good. Michael Thomas looked good. Olave looked good. Juwan Johnson looked good. And honestly, if he gets Kendre Miller back, a little bit more of a talented pass-catching running back, and then when he gets Kamara back in week 4, I think this offense takes another step forward. This week, he's getting the Carolina Panthers at Carolina. You think that kind of sounds scary until you find out that J.C. Horn has a hamstring injury and is expected to miss multiple weeks. So their secondary is down their number 1 corner. So that means their number 2 corner is going to slide over Olave. Number 3 corner is going to be on Thomas. Number 4 corner is going to be on Shaheed. Next thing you know, I mean, people are going to be getting burned left and right. I mean, they're going to look worse than Eli Apple out there. So I love Derek Carr next week and honestly pretty much for the rest of the season. He does have a tough matchup week 3 against Green Bay, but then he gets Tampa Bay. So, I mean, I like Derek Carr a lot, and he doesn't have a bye week till week 11, so he can help you out. Last week, he only put up 18.6 fantasy points, but honestly, I think he's got a good chance to improve on that by far. And not only that, Tennessee's defense, like, let's give them some credit because they're a lot better than people give them credit for. Now, their secondary is not that great, but their defense is pretty solid. And they really showed up. They really showed up and played well, holding the Saints in the red zone last week. So, and also if they could really get their left tackle position shored up with Trevor Penning, who's supposed to be a dog, but he looked more like a puppy dog last week, getting run over as much as he did. But hopefully he's going to right the ship and get back in there and protect Carr's blind side a little bit better. But for right now, I like Derek Carr at number 3. Number 4, Clay's really going to like this. Baker Mayfield, honestly, looked a lot better than I was expecting in Tampa Bay, which, you know, they made the decision to go to Baker really quick, and I can see why. 21 of 34, only 173 passing yards, but 2 touchdowns, and then he had 8 carries for 11 yards. You really like to see those 8 carries. And that was against the Minnesota defense. It's not very good. But this week, he's getting a Chicago defense that just let Jordan Love throw 3 touchdown passes against them. So in a very under talented, or however you want to say, a lackluster wide receiver room in Green Bay. And then now we got Baker coming in with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Trey Palmer. So sign me up because I think there's a good chance that they're and it's in Tampa Bay. It's not in Chicago, so we don't have to worry about the weather or nothing like that there. So I like Baker this week against them, and honestly, running the ball 8 times, yeah, he only got 11 yards, but he ran the ball 8 times. You're probably not going to get that poor of efficiency every week. So if he's running, 5 to 8 times every week, there's a good chance you might throw a touchdown or 20 or 30 yards in there with that kind of run. So yeah, I like that a lot. Not only that, Chicago's defense gave up 2 touchdowns to Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs had Aaron Rodgers throwing to him last year, and wasn't that great. So you get Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Trey Palmer, Baker Mayfield. To me, honestly, still looks better than Jordan Love. I like Baker Mayfield this week a lot, playing at home against Chicago, and he's only owned in 4% of leagues. And that's going to pretty much wrap up the quarterbacks. Jordan Love could have made this list. He's got a pretty decent matchup this week. But I'm still not 100% sold on that offense just yet. I need to see it a little bit more. But this week they're playing at Atlanta. But honestly, last week Atlanta did a pretty good job on defense, which they do. They spent some time trying to. Hang on, I'm about to give you some stats on it. Yeah, against Carolina on defense, but I don't know if it was as much as Atlanta's defense as it was Carolina's offense being led by the rookie Bryce Young, which was a little underwhelming. So we'll see. But anyway, that's my quarterbacks for this week. Going on to my running backs, there's quite a few of these that I really like. I've got 4 that I'm going to go into detail, but I'll probably give you 1 or 2 more that I do really like also. But number 1 on the list by far, Kenneth Gainwell for Philadelphia. Owned in 21.5% leagues. He's playing against Minnesota at home this week. We know their offense is terrible. We've seen Tampa Bay go up there and beat them almost beat them in Minnesota. So, but anyway, Kenneth Gainwell for Philadelphia. Going and playing at home against Minnesota. Honestly, the talk was true. We heard it. We kind of talked about it a little bit on the pod before, but there was beat writers and everybody out of Philadelphia coming out and saying Kenneth Gainwell's the number 1 RB, and we were all just like, yeah, right. All right, because they go out, they sign Rashad Penny, they go out, they trade for DeAndre Swift. And you're telling us the guy that's been there the whole time, Kenneth Gainwell, that was number 2 on the depth chart behind Miles Sanders, is going to be the number 1 now after you go spend all this money on these other guys. But the guy you already had is going to be number 1 now. That's crazy. Anyway, so really confusing. But hey, you know what? He was involved. He was in 60% of the snaps on offense. He was involved in the passing downs and the run. He had 14 carries, and he had 4 catches. So involved in both aspects in a run-heavy team with an excellent offensive line that Philadelphia does have. Sign me up, man. 4 catches for 20 yards, 14 carries for 54 yards, and he's going to get some goal line opportunities. He's a little banged up right now. Didn't practice today with a rib injury, quote unquote, but probably just held out. All they were doing was a walkthrough today. Give them a chance to get a practice in tomorrow. They play Thursday night against the Vikings at home. Don't really love Thursday night games, but I think Kenneth Gainwell's got rest of season value right now, being the number 1 in that offense. So sign me up. And DeAndre Swift only played 28% of snaps. So I don't know. And then Boston Scott, 13% of snaps, and Rashawn Penny, he was healthy and he was a scratch. It says it right there. Kenneth Gainwell's number 1, and he's only under 28% of leagues. Pick him up, no doubt. All right, moving on to my number 2 guy, running back, Tyler Algier for Atlanta. Talked a little bit about him. Clay talked a little bit about him. I had another buddy of mine tell me about him, and like, hey, Tyler Algier's still there. I'm like, nah, man, they signed, they draft Bijan number 1. There ain't no way they're going to use Tyler Algier a lot. Wrong. He's owned in 43% of leagues last week. Played Carolina, honestly. And I got to give props to Clay because he called it. He said that, he said Algiers still there and he doesn't think they're going to go away from them, and he's right. They're not going away from them yet. I'm going to throw that caveat in there because I think eventually they will end up going away from it. It'll be the Bijan show. But I think this is them easing Bijan in more than it is letting Tyler Algier have a work share. But either way, had 15 carries, averaged 5 yards a carry for 75 yards, and he got three catches. So Tyler Algier, great week for him, and honestly will be involved a lot more than a lot of us thought. Also getting some goal line work, had 2 touchdowns. So, I expect it to even out a little bit more. I think Bijan will have a little bit more target share as we go. But until that happens, also, Atlanta was running the ball like they're the friggin' 1970 Bears or something, coming out there and running it. I think they only had like 17 passes or 18 passes for Desmond Ridder. So if they keep running the ball that much, they could end up being involved, both of them, this much again. So who knows? But right now, if Tyler Algier's out there, he's definitely worth a pickup and ride him while he's hot, or at least until they stop playing him. This week, he's playing at home against Green Bay, who we seen Chicago kind of struggle against last week. But it seems like Atlanta's got a lot better run game because they were able to run the ball very efficiently against a Carolina front that's pretty strong. And so I think Tyler Algier is a good chance to be a solid flex play this week. Going to number 3, this one is really surprised me also, is Joshua Kelly from the Los Angeles Chargers. Owned in 11% of leagues. This week they're going to be playing at Tennessee, but more importantly, he split carries with Austin Eckler last week in a close game against Miami. 16 carries for 90 yards for Josh Kelly. And also, more importantly to note, that Austin Eckler emerged with an ankle injury and was held out of practice today. So obviously it's probably just a maintenance day. But Brandon Staley said he didn't have an update on the severity of the injury. I would be willing to bet because it didn't seem like he had any injury during the game. But maybe that's why Josh Kelly got 16 carries. But Josh Kelly also got some goal line work and scored a touchdown. And that's really relevant because this offense is probably going to be very efficient, very good. And Eckler had a great day, 117 yards on the ground and several catches. But this Kellen Moore offense looked a lot like that Cowboys offense that we've seen for years that was very high-powered, very efficient. And this really looked like a Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott type show where Austin Eckler was the more involved Tony Pollard in the pass game, a lot more efficient. Only they kind of swapped roles where, as before in Dallas, Ezekiel Elliott got the first crack at carries during the game, and then they worked in Pollard. Well, this is like Pollard's the first crack, and then they work in Zeke in the second part, and Josh Kelly Zeke. So, and not only that, but if Austin Eckler's already banged up right now, I mean, it would not hurt at all to have Josh Kelly sitting on your bench ready because he is a probably high-end RB2 at worst if Austin Eckler ends up being ruled out or ends up being injured. So, and not only that, but honestly, in a good game script, a positive game script for them, they should run the ball enough. Joshua Kelly could be a flex play for you, especially if he gets in the end zone. So I like Josh Kelly a lot. That's my number 3 running back. Going on into number 4 running back, it's going to be Kyron Williams for the Los Angeles Rams, owned at 10.3%. This week, they're going to be going against the daunted San Francisco 49ers defense. I do not recommend really this week against that defense, but if they do end up having to pass the ball, he seems like the pass catching back. But honestly, here we go again. It's Cam Akers' show. No, it's not. So, I mean, that's all we can say about that. Cam Akers is the man. Not. I mean, when are we going to learn, people? We really thought it was. I mean, everybody was talking Cam Akers up, and then he was extremely inefficient. 22 carries this week at 1.9 yards a carry. 22 carries at 1.9 yards a carry. But he did salvage his day with a touchdown. He got lucky. He found a four-leaf clover somewhere on the field. But let's be honest, the team in the back you're going to want is going to be Kyron Williams. He was much more efficient. He had 15 carries to Cam Akers' 22, but he had 15 carries for 52 yards. Now that's only 3.5 yards a carry, which isn't great, but it's way better than 1.9. And you know Sean McVay's going to see that. Also, he was targeted way more. He was targeted in the pass game twice, where Cam Akers I don't think was targeted at all. So if you're going to have a back out of this backfield, you're going to want the one that's targeted in the passing game, because there's a good chance there are going to be a lot of negative game scripts. Excuse me. There's a good chance they're going to be a lot of negative game scripts, and if they're going to be throwing the ball, you're going to have the guy that's going to be on the field when they're throwing the ball. That's going to be Kyron Williams. So I like him a lot, but not only that, Kyron Williams also had 2 touchdowns. So it seems like he was used in the red zone more than Cam Akers. So to me, I think Kyron Williams is going to end up being the more valuable back unless he gets hurt. And that's why he's my number 4 on here. And their offense looked a lot better than people thought, honestly. I mean, Matthew Stafford looked pretty good. They moved the ball well, and they ended up winning the game, for Pete's sake. So, yeah, give me some Kyron Williams. But that's going to, all right. And then another couple names just to mention that I do like for running backs. I like Roschon Johnson. Caught a lot of passes. Still not convinced he's going to be all over it as far as he's not. I don't think he's going to take over that backfield just yet, but I do think he gets more run than people are going to realize, and I would keep an eye on him because I think eventually he does take over that backfield. Let's see, and then another one that I do like, Devin A. Keep an eye on Devin A-Chain. He was coming off that shoulder injury. He was a healthy scratch, quote unquote, but I think he really just wasn't ready, and they were just kind of protecting him. They'd practiced without him all week. I think he comes back, and he probably has a role this week with them. And then last but certainly not least, I think you really got to think, we had J.K. Dobbins go down, and we've been wondering, like, a lot of people are like, oh, it's going to be Justice Hill, or, oh, it's going to be Gus Edwards. Man, I think it's going to be Melvin Gordon. I'll be honest. Melvin Gordon was a healthy scratch, but Melvin Gordon was a healthy scratch because he doesn't play special teams. And Justice Hill does, and Gus Edwards was the backup. So I think Melvin Gordon comes out and is the main guy there unless they sign somebody, which they very well could. But Melvin Gordon looked pretty good in the preseason. He was pretty serviceable for him last year, and I think there's a good chance that he's active this week, and Melvin Gordon ends up leading and it's not by a lot, and he's not somebody I really want, but I think he ends up leading the Baltimore Ravens in carries in this next week. So that's going to round out running backs. We're going to roll right on into our wide receivers, and number 1 wide receiver, and to me, the number 1 waiver wire ad for this week, the man, Puka Nacua. That's correct. Puka Nacua. So for the Los Angeles Rams, owned in 2.5% of leagues, playing the Cooper Kupp role, honestly. Comes out of nowhere as a rookie. 15 targets, 10 catches, 119 yards, averaging 11.9 a catch, and looked great. Honestly, he was in on 78% of the plays. He commanded a 39% target share of the passes. 39%. All right. If that doesn't sound like a Cooper Kupp stat, then I don't know what does. But 15 targets. Do you know who leads the league in targets for pass catchers currently? Tyreek Hill and one other person. That is correct. Puka Nacua with 15 targets. Tied with Tyreek Hill for the league on targets currently. And he ran all of the wide receiver 1 routes for this offense. He is the Cooper Kupp replacement for the Los Angeles Rams, and Matt Stafford looked comfortable throwing to him. And it could have been a better day. because there was a couple routes that he ran that him and Stafford weren't quite on the same page, and the timing was a little off. If they get that down, I mean, we could be talking about the wide receiver. Well, not the wide receiver one for the week because he didn't have no touchdown like Tyreek Hill. But, I mean, we could be talking about a high-end wide receiver two coming off the waiver wire right now. So I like Nakua a lot, and I think he is the number one waiver wire ad this week. And honestly could be relevant coming off of even when Cooper Kupp comes back. Now, obviously, he's not going to be doing that, but anyway, he's a big guy too, 6'2", 205 out of BYU. So, I like Puka Nakua a lot. That's my number one pick for this week, and the number one wide receiver. Number two for me is going to be Kendrick Bourne out of New England. And he's only under 2.3% of leagues. Went up against Philadelphia, who's got a little bit of a banged-up secondary, but New England fell behind, and as we talked about before, Mac Jones threw the ball 54 times, but he had really good chemistry with Mac Jones. And if Mac Jones keeps throwing it a lot, if they keep falling behind, I think Kendrick Bourne is honestly the Jacoby Myers replacement. We thought it was going to be Juju, but it really looked like it looks like it's going to be Kendrick Bourne. And he was in on 91% of the snap share. His average yards per target was only 5, but his yards per catch was 10.67. And he had 2 touchdowns, 11 targets, 6 catches for 64 yards, but 2 touchdowns. So Mac Jones is looking for him in the end zone also. I think Kendrick Bourne is going to be kind of a sleeper. Not 100% sure if he's going to have the value that Nakua will over the next several weeks, but Kendrick Bourne could have more season-long value just because Nakua's could be hit pretty hard depending on when Cooper Kupp comes back. But I also do like Kendrick Bourne a lot more this week because I still think that teams are probably going to be lining up their cornerback one on Juju, and Kendrick Bourne is going to be that corner. You'll be getting that cornerback two. And if Mac Jones is looking for him, and not only that, Miami's secondary is still pretty banged up with Jalen Ramsey being on the IR. So that also helps Kendrick Bourne a fair amount also. And New England should be in a negative game script. That way Mac Jones should be throwing the ball a fair amount. And with him looking at Kendrick Bourne the most on the team, why not? I like Kendrick Bourne a lot. So he could have more long-term value than Nakua, but Kendrick Bourne is going to be number 2 just because he didn't get 15 targets on a team that needs a wide receiver to step up huge. Number 3 for me is going to be Zay Jones. Honestly, we thought Zay Jones could be the odd man out in Jacksonville. And he's only on 29% of leagues, but going up against the Colts, he was in on all 2 wide receiver sets. He was way more involved than Christian Kirk. Second, he's really looking like the second or third option, depending on if you throw ETN in there at the second option behind Calvin Ridley. But he was in on 89% of the plays for Jacksonville. And Trevor Lawrence looks like he's taking that next step forward. And Zay Jones is that deep threat for their team. So Trevor Lawrence is not afraid to chunk the ball deep. And if Calvin Ridley is going to command the attention that it seems like he's going to, Zay Jones is going to be burning some defenses deep, and sign me up for that in Jacksonville. This past week, just throw some stats at you for him. This past week, 7 targets, 5 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown, but 11 yards per catch. So, but still 7 and 5 for 55 and a touchdown. That's pretty much where he was last year, and you'll take that. This week, they're going up against Kansas City. And we know that their secondary is not that great. So really a plus matchup this week also for them at home against Kansas City. So I like Zay Jones a lot, number 3. Number 4, another homer pick, but I got to because this guy looked really explosive and is a big play waiting to happen. If you get bonuses for big plays, this could be somebody you really want to pay attention for. That's Rashid Shaheed for New Orleans. Only owned 2% of the league. Coming in with number 22, looking like a running back out there as far as his jersey, but a wide receiver. This week, they're going against Carolina. I just told you, their number 1 corner's out. So, and he's going to get whoever off the bench that was probably on the practice squad the week before. But he's just a big play waiting to happen. He even ran the ball some. And if you get kick return yardage, that's something else. He returns kicks and punts for New Orleans. This past week, 110 yards on kick returns. That's 7. And so 110 yards is depending on how you do it. Some do a point for every 25 yards. Some do a point for every 50. Either way, it's a couple more extra points. But also, he had 6 targets, 5 catches for 89 yards and a touchdown. All right. That is a 17.8 yards per catch and 14.83 yards per target. That tells you right there that Derek Carr, when he looks at him, 6 targets, when he looks at him, he's looking at him down the field for a big play. And they're not afraid to throw the ball on third down. We seen it last week on a 3rd and long. Honestly, the game was kind of on the line. We had the ball in the 4th quarter late, and we needed a first down. Play action pass to Rashid Shaheed down the sideline on 3rd and long with Derek Carr. So he's got confidence in him to catch the ball on 3rd down going deep. I loved it. Also, like I said, he ran the ball for a couple times. He ran the ball twice for 11 yards. He did have a fumble, unfortunately, but I don't think that affects him or holds him back because he's been pretty sure-handed last year. So I like Rashid Shaheed a lot. He's my number 4. And coming in at number 5, it could have been either one. Honestly, you could say the Texans wide receivers just because neither one of them are owned very much. But I'm going to go Nico Collins just because he's the bigger wide receiver, the younger wide receiver, and probably going to have the most chemistry with C.J. Stroud. But that's Nico Collins for Houston. He's owned in 59% of leagues. He's the wide receiver 1 there. Robert Woods is the other one. Both, Collins had 11 targets. Woods had 10 targets. Collins had 11. Woods had 10. Either way you go, but either way, Nico Collins for Houston. He's a big, talented wide receiver. He's commanded a target share, but it's a run-heavy offense, guys. They don't want to throw the ball with him as much as they had to last week whenever they were trailing against Baltimore. This week they're playing against Indianapolis. I expect it to be a lot more competitive game. They're probably going to run the ball more, but Nico Collins is a big red zone target, and if he can build some chemistry with C.J. Stroud being a young quarterback, that can go a long way, and it could end up making Collins very productive. But anyway, let's see. I'll get you some stats on Collins. He was in there 70% snap share, 6 catches for 80 yards. His yards per catch, though, 13.3. That's a lot of good yards after the catch because his yards per target were 7. But that's a lot of good yards after the catch there. Also for Robert Woods, 75% snap count, 10 targets, 6 for 57. Not quite as efficient, but either way, he's going to be out there a lot for run blocking. This week, like I said, they get the Colts. It's going to be a lot closer game. I really expect Nico Collins to probably be the number wide receiver 1 there. But that's going to wrap up. There's a couple other wide receivers you could talk about. Tutu Atwell had a big game for the Rams, but I don't expect that every week. And he's somebody you could throw into that wide receiver category in deeper leagues for sure. Also, Marvin Mims, even though he didn't really have a great game, I really don't think he's going to be much. He was a highly added player before, and I know I was pretty high on him, but it looks like Judy's got a decent chance to possibly come back this week. So I would keep an eye on that for sure. But that's going to pretty much round out the wide receiver portion. We're going to roll right on into our tight ends. And the number 1 tight end for me is going to be Zach Ertz. We've seen this guy before be a high-end tight end 1. He's not there anymore, but honestly, he had 10 targets in week 1 for Arizona Cardinals. And he was in on a large portion of he was in on 77% of the snap counts, but he had 10 targets, 6 catches, only 21 yards. But against Washington, pretty solid defensive team. But Josh Dobbs looked very comfortable looking for him very often. And I really think personally that Zach Ertz is going to be very involved until he either gets hurt or something happens. Um, I like him a lot in this offense, especially with Dobbs. If he's looking for him already, um, and he's being this involved, I mean, 6 for 21. Let's be honest, Zach Ertz is going to be a lot more efficient than that. This week, they're going to get the Giants, and they're a little bit better against the tight end than Washington, but I think that with the way tight end is, 10 targets is 10 targets. And he's not going to be that inefficient all year. So I like Zach Ertz a lot more than any of these other guys that are out there on the waiver wire. And also, to be honest, um, a young quarterback like Dobbs, we say it all the time. Their tight end is their safety blanket. And Arizona's supposed to be tanking. I don't know what that means. So, Ertz could get traded. This could be their way of showing him off to try to get a trade for him. Who knows? But this week they're playing the Giants at home. I still like Ertz. And not only that, do you know who leads the league at tight end targets? Zach Ertz. Yep, with 10. So there you go. You want the tight end that's been targeted the most in the league? It's Zach Ertz, owned in 39% of the league. Only owned in 39% of leagues, and he's free on the waiver wire right now. So go out and add him. I'd start him because you could do a lot worse for sure. Number 2 for me is going to be Hunter Henry for New England Patriots. He's only owned in 4% of leagues. Going up against Miami this week. He was in on 79% of the snaps for New England. We've already talked about 2 other New England players in Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne. And Mac Jones throwing 54 times. If he's going to be throwing 54 times, give me the tight end that's the most active on New England's offense, because we know they typically like to throw their tight end a fair amount. They didn't do it as much last year, but in the past they have, obviously with Gronk there. Now, I'm not saying Hunter Henry's going to be Gronk, but if Mac Jones is throwing the ball 50 times, there's a good chance Hunter Henry's going to be getting at least a fair amount of volume in that offense, especially one that you could start on a weekly basis. He had 6 targets, 5 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. I know Mike Gesicki's there, but Mike Gesicki is known for not being a blocker. And we all know that Bill Belichick's not going to have a tight end in there that doesn't block. We remember that because we remember Gronk telling about it, because they've asked him about that before. Gronk, why do you block so much? Because I wouldn't play if I didn't. And that's why Hunter Henry's out there, because he's a good blocking tight end. He's a big guy, and he's a big red zone target. Honestly, if they're going to be playing from behind a fair amount, like they were against Philadelphia, and this week they're going to probably be playing from behind against Miami, I like Hunter Henry's chance to repeat what he did last week, 5 for 56 and a touchdown. Honestly, I don't think you can ask for any more than that. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was good enough for Hunter Henry to be the number 1 tight end in fantasy, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, sure enough. Number 1 tight end in fantasy for you right there, Hunter Henry. Go out, pick him up for free off the waiver wire. And who knows, he might end up being one of the waiver wire steals for the year. But Hunter Henry is my number 2. And then last but certainly not least, and not for this week, but the weeks after, is Hayden Hurst for Carolina. Only owned in 4.8% leagues. We remember that name because last year for Cincinnati, he was on the waiver wire column a lot, being very productive, a very athletic, active tight end in the pass game. And on what we just talked about, young quarterbacks, tight ends are their safety blanket, just like for Bryce Young. And like I was talking about with Dobbs, for Bryce Young, Hayden Hurst, his tight end in Carolina, is safety blanket. 7 targets, 5 catches for 41 yards and touchdown. When you get to tight ends, you just mainly got to be looking for that touchdown upside too. Guys that are able to get open in the red zone, and Hayden Hurst has been one of those guys over his career. But 7 targets on 5 catches for 41 yards and touchdown, and he only played in 53% of the snaps. Now, that can be looked as good or bad. It can be looked as bad because he only played 53%, but it can also be looked as good because he was that efficient. If for some reason they start mixing him in more, say 60, 70% of the snaps, what could his target share and his catches be at that point? So let's just see where it goes, but I like him a lot. This week he's playing New Orleans. We all know New Orleans is one of the best for the last several years at defending the tight end position, and that's primarily because Demario Davis is there defending them, and he's one of the best coverage linebackers in the league, if not the best coverage linebacker in the league. And they're playing they're playing New Orleans, so I would not probably start him this week. But after that, they got Seattle and Minnesota, which are great matchups, and we like him a lot. So I like Hayden Hurst going forward. Pick him up, stash him on your bench, or don't pick him up and see if somebody picks him up, plays him against Nola, and he tanks, and then they drop him and then pick him up again next week, because I will be talking about him next week if his percentage doesn't go up. But that's pretty much – I'll go ahead and throw a couple more names out there that I do like at tight end that I'm not going to elaborate on, but I did think had really good weeks and could end up being fairly profitable in fantasy. And that's one of them's Logan Thomas for Washington. He had a fairly heavy target share in Washington with 8 targets, 443. And like we just said, young quarterback Sam Howell, safety valve is their tight end. And not only that, but Logan Thomas was in on 82% of the snap share. That's a lot. All right, 82%. So Logan Thomas is one that I really like. And then let's see, there was one other guy, Luke Musgrave for Jordan Love. He was not as active, but he's a really athletic tight end. Had a really big play, really long run that he fell down on that was going to be a touchdown. But 4 targets, 3 for 50. Cole Kmet's another one, but he's owned a little much. But another big sleeper for me that I like coming in, that he had a lot of targets, but not a lot of production, is Jake Ferguson for the Dallas Cowboys. Okay. We've seen Dalton Schultz be successful for the last several years as their tight end. He leaves. Jake Ferguson is the next Dalton Schultz. 7 targets this past week, only 2 catches for 11 yards against the Giants. But honestly, they didn't have to throw the ball a lot because they were leading, because their defense was killing New York Giants. And it was really, really bad weather in New York, a really bad rainstorm, a lot of fumbling, not good for Dak Prescott to be able to pass the ball very accurately. But he got 7 targets on that team, and it was the most of any Dallas player. Jake Ferguson, he got targeted the most of any Dallas player in that game. So keep an eye out on Jake Ferguson. He might be somebody you might even want to take a streamer on, pick up, throw on your bench. Next week, he's going to have the Jets, and they got a stout defense, but you never know. Dallas loves to use their tight end, especially in the red zone. So keep an eye out on Jake Ferguson. And that's pretty much going to wrap up my tight end position, guys. Those were just a little extra nuggets there for you. And then let's jump on into our streaming defenses. And I've got 2 for you this week, and really 3 if you want to go in. But Houston's defense at home against Indianapolis, we seen them pretty much shut down Lamar Jackson, that offense, last week. They did end up losing the game, but DeMeco Ryans coming from San Francisco, we knew it was just a matter of time till he righted the ship on that defense in Houston, and it looks like it could be sooner rather than later. And they looked really good against Baltimore. Even their offense looked really terrible, but they sacked Lamar for 4 times, and coincidentally, they're going to be playing Lamar's pretty much shadow of himself as a rookie against Indianapolis the next week, or this week, at home. And Indianapolis gave up 4 sacks, or Anthony Richardson gave up 4 sacks in their matchup. So I like Houston's D do pretty well to get some sacks and maybe some turnovers at home. Also, you could throw that the opposite. You could like Indianapolis's defense against Houston, because C.J. Stroud's young. Their offense isn't very efficient. They got a defensive head coach. And honestly, Indianapolis's defense looked a lot better against Jacksonville's offense than I anticipated. And that was against a really good offense with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson and a lot of good wide receiver and pass catchers. So Indianapolis's defense could be pretty serviceable against Houston's defense also. But that was an extra one. My number 2 is going to be the Browns defense against Pittsburgh. And I don't know about y'all, but just about most of the people in Louisiana know that the Browns shut down Joe Burrow for 82 yards passing. 82 yards. I don't even know what to say about that. But they pretty much shut down the Cincinnati Bengals on offense, which is a feat in itself. And this week, they get the high-powered Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Yeah, just kidding. They get Pittsburgh. They're playing them at Pittsburgh, though. But that could be some weather involved, depending on wind and the cold and everything. But the Browns are going to Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh offense that was really struggling against the San Francisco defense. And you could argue that this Browns defense is just a step under that San Francisco defense. And they made Pittsburgh look pretty bad. And not only that, but Pittsburgh lost Deontay Johnson in the third quarter and is expected to miss several weeks. So they're down a pass catcher on top of that. So I like Cleveland's defense a lot to have a good chance to shut down Pittsburgh's offense as well. Those are the two that I'm really looking for that aren't owned very heavily at all in any leagues. That's going to wrap up my defenses and kickers. Obviously, we all know we like kickers that are going to be in domes, right? So let's look at some kickers that are going to be in domes that aren't owned in a ton of leagues. Let's see. I like Greg Zuerlein for the Jets at Dallas. Love that one. Even though Dallas is a beast of a defense, they're still. I like Zuerlein's leg kicking there, and he's kicked in Dallas before because he was with them in the past. So I like Greg Zuerlein a lot. Let's see. I like Indianapolis Matt Gay, who had a pretty terrible. Well, he had 3 extra points last week, but he didn't miss anything. But he's going to be at Houston in their dome. I like, let's see, Riley Patterson at home against Seattle. Didn't do a lot last week at home. At Kansas City. But like him. And then last but certainly not least, and one of my favorites, he's not in Carolina, but put up 12 points last week for the New Orleans Saints. Blake Grupe replaced Will Lutz, but comes in and makes a 50-yarder and 2 30-yarders and an extra point for New Orleans. Like Blake Grupe a lot. They're in Carolina, but that's typically not a terrible place to have a kicker kick. So I like Blake Grupe a lot. Not only that, but you get him, his home games are in a dome. So I like Blake Grupe a lot. So that's who I want to go with as far as kickers. Also, one last guy that you could throw in there, Nick Folk, the number 1 kicker. And honestly, he was really high last year for Tennessee, and I think it's really because they run the ball so much. But this week it's going to be at home against the Chargers, so it's outside. But he still kicks the ball so well, and I believe also he hasn't missed an extra point in, like, I want to say that somebody said at the last telecast it's been like 40 or 50 attempts he hasn't missed an extra point. So that should give you a little confidence. And also last week he had a 50-yarder and a 40-yarder. So he put up 18 points last week. So if you need a kicker, maybe go out there and pick up Nick Folk. So there you go. That's going to round out the waiver wire edition and our kicker segment. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for listening. Please like, subscribe, download, give us your feedback, and just share our podcast. We really appreciate everybody that listens. Give us some feedback. Anything you do want to hear, you don't want to hear. Obviously, we're interested in that as well, to hear your feedback and find out what you want us to do on the podcast, if there's anything specific that you'd like to hear more of. And thank you for everybody that's listening, and keep chasing that trophy, guys.